Welcome back to Power Squared. So the situation has changed and AI is getting more expensive, context is expensive, and you are probably making mistakes that are costing you money when you're coding with your agents or doing other things with your agents. So in today's video, we're going to tell you how to avoid that. So Josh, we've got 15 tips. What's the first one?
Yeah, tip number one is writing concise prompts with a clear context and a stopping point. What we mean by that is making sure that your prompts don't contain too much information and then there is a clear, action pathway so that you're not making AI keep coming back with questions. The more clearer you are with the prompt, the more effective it's going to be, the more it's going to save you money, and it's going to mean your agent's going to be more useful rather than it bumbling about costing you money.
Yeah. And tip number 2, start a new session when the task changes. So the last thing you want to do is keep that conversation going, because whenever you keep the conversation going, you're still sending the old information every time you send a message to that agent. So the why is old conversation history keeps getting carried forward even when it no longer helps. So there's multiple reasons why this is a bad idea. One is, of course, the tokens and the cost. But the other thing is that the agent, as it builds up more and more information, more and more context, it's not going to do as good of a job. It's also not going to be as fast.
Tip number 3, ending long sessions with a short summary and continuing in a fresh session. What we mean by that is keeping a summary for the useful decisions without making your model reread every old message. It means that your model or your agent isn't going to be guessing. It's going to be a lot more useful going forward, and you're just going to have a better context. And again, saving a bit more money.
Next tip, preserve important insights before you discard a chat. So a lot of the time you'll have this conversation and then you'll go to your new conversation. But what about your last chat? Maybe there was something that was useful there and maybe you've just lost it. So just bear that in mind before you start the new chat. If there's something important, ask the agent to save it somewhere, or you save it somewhere, or move it to your next chat. But don't lose that information if it's important. Fresh sessions are useful, but you do not want to lose decisions, file discoveries, constraints, or fixes that the agent uncovered in the previous session that you still want, that you still need.
Next up, we have keeping your project instructions short and specific. So what do I mean by that? If you keep your instructions short to the point, it's going to save you money, not cost you more tokens, because the more bloated your instructions become, the more your agent's going to have to keep reading over those instructions. And when an agent loads, it's going to read those instructions first. So again, it's got to grab all of that context. So try and keep them smaller, and that way you're not going to bloat conversations and use tokens unnecessarily.
And another thing that we often talk about with this tip is that fact of having that index file, isn't it? Where we have an index file that points to other files that are important to it or that could be important to it. But it means that it doesn't read every single instruction that we have, but instead it looks at the instructions that are available and then it chooses the ones that are relevant for the conversation. Next tip, store old logs, plans, and notes in a clearly marked archive folder. So it's a good idea to keep a hold of these things that you've been working on. You don't want to lose the history because that could be important context at some point, or maybe you want that as your kind of audit trail. But the last thing that you want is for when you're speaking to your agent, it goes off and reads this folder, sees something that you've superseded. So maybe you've planned something, but maybe you've changed it in a later stage. You don't want it to think that the current situation is that old version that you worked on. So you want to clearly mark it. You want to have your instructions file in there saying that these files may be outdated, only use them for background, or that these files may be outdated, don't read them unless the user explicitly instructs you to.
Next up, we have attaching only the files needed for the current task and also telling the agent what to ignore. Again, this is another good piece of information around context. You're keeping it focused to the point, telling the agent what to focus on rather than trying to get it to guess what to look for. And also by telling it what to ignore, it's not going to try and look at those files and consume context. Fairly self-explanatory, but really good to remember.
Next tip is to split big work into separate research, planning, building, and testing sessions. And Josh and I have covered this before about going through this process of properly planning something out and then building it in smaller chunks. So this is a similar concept. You don't want to throw so much stuff at the agent all in one go. Like it says here, if you combine everything, it makes the session heavy and noisy. It's going to cost you a lot of money. And when you've got such a big session, it's too much context for the agent and it's going to drop things and it's going to do the wrong thing. So yeah, split it into separate phases.
Next tip is turning off web search, connectors, MCP servers, anything else, unless you need them. So rather than just having it all on by default, I can be guilty of that sometimes, but rather than doing that, turn off things that you don't need and then only turn them on when you need them. Otherwise, your agent's going to go and if it's available, it's going to use it. It's going to try and grab as much context as it wants. It's like a giant Pac-Man, if you will, absorbing all that information. But this way, it's not going to do it. It's going to just be a bit more clear and to the point and use less tokens, save you money. Just good to know.
Next tip, paste the useful parts of logs and errors, not the entire output. So I've been guilty of this one as well, Josh. So going into the browser dev tools and seeing all of the errors that have come up and then just highlighting everything and copying and pasting into the chat. It's not really the best idea. Really, you want to find what the problem is, if you can do that, and then just copy that specific part. So you're not sending as much information to the agent. And also, when it is an error, the most useful signal is usually near the error. So yeah, try to copy smaller parts.
Yeah, our next one is converting long documents, PDFs, slide decks into Markdown. AI loves Markdown. If you're not familiar with that concept, it's really important to understand that the more information you can put in Markdown, the more efficient it's going to be. We take a PDF document, for example, it has to do conversion before it can get that information out. So having it in Markdown, it reads it as a plain text file effectively, and it's going to be a lot more easier to get that information, that context. It's not got to use different tools to extract the information. You're going to have a better time if it's in Markdown. So try and get it there first.
And so you can, of course, just ask your agent, convert this into Markdown, but Microsoft have provided a tool for that called Mark It Down, which is a really cool tool. And we'll put a link to that in the description. You need Python installed as a prerequisite. So just bear that in mind. You need to be able to run Python on your machine. But it's an awesome tool and I'm using that constantly. So use text instead of screenshots when you can, if it's possible, and then crop those screenshots tightly when you need them. So rather than, and I'm guilty of this one as well sometimes, rather than taking a screenshot of the entire screen, if you don't need to, take a screenshot of just a little bit, or if you can, just highlight the text and copy and paste that into the chat. That's going to be better for the agent. So it's a really important tip because images really are quite intensive. And this goes back to the talk about PDF. Sometimes a PDF can be processed like an image because you can't get to the text behind it. So it's really expensive to run that, as it says there. Images are expensive context.
And yeah, next one is to ask for the smallest change that solves the problem. So don't overwhelm your agent with all of these things to change. Tackle a little bit at a time, and it's going to be quicker and easier. It's not going to, ask for things as much. It's going to understand the task at hand more effectively. Again, less tokens, easier to handle.
So we've talked about this before, but it's really important to bring it up again because it is extremely important, especially when it comes to cost. Use a strong model just for the things where you need the strong model, and then drop back down to cheaper models for the smaller tasks. So in essence, it's use a strong model for creating a plan or for deep thinking, deep research, that kind of thing. But then use cheaper models like Haiku, for example, for carrying out clear steps. It's going to cost you much less. Expensive reasoning is most useful when deciding what to do, not for every routine edit. Especially, please don't use Claude Opus 4.8 just for changing the file name or something like that, or moving a file. That's definitely not what you want to do. It's wasting money.
Guilty.
We've all done it.
Yeah. Next tip, put the most important requirements at the start and the end. The reason we say that is because models are more likely to kind of not keep as much information around what's in the middle of those requirements, having at the start and the end. That's what it sees more. So it's going to recognize that and keep that in context a bit longer. And yeah, it's going to be easier to kind of pull that out versus being lost in the middle of a big, large file, for example.
So those are 15 tips, and we hope that you enjoyed them. Those are 15 tips that we also bear in mind nowadays when we're talking to agents. So like we say, we've been guilty of lots of these things because, of course, when you start off, you don't exactly know how you should be interacting with agents. But if you follow these 15 tips, no doubt your conversations will be better, you'll get better quality, but you'll also be saving yourself money, you'll be consuming less tokens, which is really, really important. So yeah, please like and subscribe if you've been happy with the video. And also, do you have tips as well? Because there's a lot more to this and we'd love to hear what your tips are. So curious to know. So please comment below with your tips. And thank you for watching.
And done.